HarvardX, which produces our HarvardX courses on the edX platform, at the moment has 53 courses accessible. We have a production studio, we have staff, we have designers, we have editors. So we actually were able to work with a large group of people and with many kinds of expertise. Our purpose in making ChinaX was to help people think about and learn something about China's history and civilization as it developed over time and as it changed over time. Part of the job of ChinaX is to give people a sense of different kinds of philosophy in China. There wasn't one Chinese philosophy. Some sense of Chinese literature and art, the way in which Chinese politics was organized, the fundamental tensions that existed in Chinese society, China's regional diversity, and so on. But there was another purpose, because we also wanted to reach people in China. I think many people in China have a very limited view of how the West understands China. We wanted to give them some sense of the richness and diversity with which we approach China. Not to teach them Chinese history, but to give them a sense of how here at this university, which has lots of scholars working on China, how we understood and taught Chinese history, philosophy, literature, society, politics, economics. We have weekly office hours where we respond to our learners, answer their questions, but also talk about what they're saying and how they've responded to forum discussions and things like that. I think we've learned that we can develop lots of cool utilities that help people do things that they couldn't otherwise do. It's been extraordinarily successful. It's built up a worldwide body of learners in 165 countries, a significant group in China itself, who are deeply engaged in the course. It's been on the order of around 50,000 students at some point or another have been engaged and have registered for the course. 70% of them are outside of the United States. 70% are already have graduated from college, but they're younger. I mean, they're in their late 20s, early to late 20s. We tended to think of online courses being aimed at college students. In fact, they're aimed at people who've graduated from college.
Scheller Teacher Education Program has a few different functions here. One is that it prepares MIT undergraduates who want to be math and science teachers. So we run a licensing program for people who want to be high school and middle school math and science teachers. My research area that I use with the program or combine with the program is in educational technology. Here I was doing a lot of research in how I could use simulations, computer simulations for education, and video games for education, and other kinds of educational technologies. Recently we've noticed that there have been two different sort of sets of people with interest in educational technology. There's one set of people who know something about education and are moving into adding the technology components to it to pursue their interest in educational technology. And there's another set of people who are technologists, computer scientists, etc., who are interested in education as an application and moving in that other direction. And so we said we should really sort of make a community, an online course that would really welcome both those people moving in either direction. People who either have expertise in education or expertise in technology, who would be sort of looking to bolster their skills and be able to pursue more of their interest in educational technology. A big mistake that people make when trying to combine education and technology, two big mistakes. One is that they start purely from one place or the other. So you can't purely start from the education, you can't purely start from technology, or you'll sort of make a mistake by having a mismatch of those two things. The other big mistake is trying to sort of take old ways of learning and trying to move them into an online space. And it's still sort of where we are in a lot of ways. So there's a little bit of a legacy. As we move into the online space, we've chosen to do it the same way. But in fact, there may be much better ways of engaging those students in learning than sort of applying those old ways of learning and just trying to digitize them.
Online courses, just like in-person courses, really run the range as far as quality goes. There are ways to do online courses that are very innovative and engaging and encourage deep thought and interaction amongst the students and with the instructor. But then there are also other ways to do it where you don't necessarily harness that type of engagement. I've seen sometimes people taking just essentially what they do in the classroom and putting that online and making that an online class, and that's not necessarily the best approach to creating and offering an online learning experience. You run the risk with an online class of losing that dynamic interaction and engagement. Even when you're in an in-person class, it's not always easy to get students interacting with one another, but can be all the more challenging online. So I think that that's one piece that students aren't always prepared for, and they can lose interest in the class if they don't feel that particular type of engagement.
Why should it be less interactive? If you go sit in a lecture and sit there passively, you realize that there's a direct correlation between grades and lecture attendance. In other words, attendance is most highly correlated with grades, and yet you were willing to sacrifice your grade by skipping. So I'm not sure if students aren't attending their class, then there isn't any interaction there. But in the online world, you always have a choice. You can interact, you can respond. After all, it's highly interactive. Right? There are always questions and assessments. There are always discussion forums.
I also believe that face-to-face interactions have a lot of value, and I think that as we do a lot more in the online learning space, we're going to be thinking a lot more about hybrid kinds of experiences where you spend some of your time online, and that might be 80 or 90%, or it might be 10%, and then you spend some time face-to-face interacting with other people, and that, again, it could be a very high percentage or a very low percentage. And for different kinds of courses and populations and content area, those percentages might be radically different. The other thing is that, again, the kinds of ways we learn online, I think, will also change. As people look at online learning, they're like, well, if online learning means you watch videos and then you answer problem sets for the kind of teaching that I do, that doesn't fit very well. But I think in a lot of ways it's so preliminary in the way that we're thinking about online education at this point, and there's so many other opportunities, whether it be doing things like I do, immersing yourself in a game or a simulation, or doing things that are highly social and interacting with other people and working in teams. There's so many kind of rich interactions that you can have online that we've just really begun to explore. And I think as we think about more of those kinds of opportunities and ways that we can facilitate those, a lot of those concerns will be addressed.
I have to say I'm also one of those professors that would like to figure out what's the formula. If there is a formula, there probably isn't a formula, and I think that with each type of class too, the content that you're teaching may be different. You're learning content, but you're also needing to apply that in an interactive way. And so it's critical to build in opportunities either in class, in online class, or outside of class where students can practice that, but that they can also share that with others, the instructor, but also with others who are in that online environment to get the feedback, because they're not doing that right in the classroom and getting that immediate feedback. So how do you do it in a way, how do you set that up, encourage that, and then also make sure that you have all the right permissions so that you can share that.
One of the big lessons we tried to convey in the fall course on designing educational technology was sort of a way of thinking about learning in general, not specifically with respect to technology, called constructivism. The idea that people construct their knowledge from experiences rather than sort of learning by being told something. And so we really tried to sort of convey that lesson in our own course, and that we tried to convey that not only by telling people that, but by trying to have them experience it as well. And that's why we tried to really have people build their own projects, do their own activities each week where they were building things and trying to learn through that process of creating their own products and their own knowledge as a part of that.
Another piece when it comes to the learning is that we know individuals vary in their learning styles. If an online course isn't designed and delivered in a way that students with varying ways of how they best learn, then it can be more challenging for them. And therefore it's not just the content of the class, but also trying to struggle with a different way of learning that compounds the difficulty of the class.
Developing an online course is hard. It's a lot of work. It can be expensive, particularly if you want to think about new and more interactive ways of running some of those courses. So just to put up a few videos and perhaps a few problem sets may not be very expensive, but to really do it in a way that's pedagogically and educationally sound, that's hard. And so I think for a lot of teachers, sort of thinking about doing that themselves may not be the right thing to do. And I think maybe what we need to think about is ways where more communities can come together and develop these things as a collective to try to have a lot of people contribute to either a single online course or maybe to a repository where there's different lessons that one could draw upon as they sort of try to assemble their own course from different pieces.
If we look at active participants in ChinaX, it's so high. We have so many people getting honor certificates, which is the way you tell where somebody's completed the course in your terms. I think for many of them, particularly since the course goes on for 18 months, it's been a very important experience in their lives. After all, we have many people who don't want to do assessments, who don't want to take tests, who just want to watch, right? And that's fine. So people register for a course, right? Then they have to decide whether they actually want to pursue it. And a lot of people decide they don't. They register it because it's easy to register. There is for many courses. Maybe they'll actually pursue one or not. So the first question to ask is, do people open the book? In other words, they go to the course website, they open it, they start to look. If they do that, they're more likely to continue.
Education has been traditionally very resistant to change, both through technology and through any other kind of change. It's just a very resistant institution. There's a lot of, there's been a lot of policy that's sort of established the way that it is. There's certain metrics that people think about. Everybody who goes through school, who has kids going through school today, sort of wants it to be like what it was like when they were kids. To some extent, maybe now we're starting to see some of that change because costs are coming down and access to the hardware that we need to sort of enable that education technology. Those are things that are going up as computers become very inexpensive and access to the internet increases. Ultimately, I think that the things that will lead to change are the fact that cost will drive a lot of it, which is not really a great reason to think about this, but cost will drive a lot of it. But I think access will drive a lot of it as well. As we think about education at the global scale, there's lots of people who don't have access to quality education. And ways that educational technology may just sort of provide a baseline for a lot of folks who don't either have any educational opportunities or very limited educational opportunities will be a way that educational technology can change things. I think the other thing that will happen is we'll start to see more and more of a push from the business side, from people who are creating the jobs of tomorrow that demand other skills from people coming out of school, and they'll sort of push for more change in what kind of things people are doing in school.
ChinaX version 2.0 is going to be extraordinary. We're going to reorganize it. We're going to make it more thematic. We're going to add wonderful stuff on Chinese philosophy, on modern literature, things on art. We're going to be talking to contemporary thinkers and intellectuals in China. We're going to be developing a whole set of modules that will go into much greater depth on things in China today that people want to know about.
We just saw what happened here in Boston the past couple of months with the snow. We lost a lot of class time. There are different ways that you can manage that, but certainly if you had a class set up, even if it was set up in a hybrid type of way, it would allow you, despite what the weather may throw at us, to still be able to have quality instruction on those particular days. But another piece is that we are always looking at ways that we can expand what we offer to students. Having online education, having courses, having degrees that people can access in an online way absolutely can help with equity in a number of different ways. So I think the most obvious way that we think about equity is we think about maybe some of those more rural or remote areas where there isn't an institution of higher education within a reasonable driving distance, or the options are limited in what you could study. So having more online options could certainly open the doors to a world of different options. But another way that I think about kind of the access, equity when it comes to access, is people who might be able to go to, can physically get to a university, but maybe need to learn in a different way. Perhaps they have their own physical restrictions, and so that is a real challenge for them. Then having those online options allows them to still access that education. So I think that that's another way that we can think about access and equity when it comes to online classes.
I'm not sure that it's going to be revolutionary, because I'm not sure how yet it will be revolutionary. Will it become more popular? Yes. Will it become a larger part of what universities like Harvard do? Yes. I think that's a given. I think that eventually what we should expect is that students will want to have a choice between taking a course in person or online, will want to be free to take the course in the summer, for example, on their own time, so they can move ahead in their sequence or graduate early, cut their costs or things like this. I think there are lots of things that online learning will make possible.
I definitely think that there is going to be a huge role for online education. I think that we're already seeing that, and I think that will continue to grow. Replace universities entirely, I'm not sure about that, because I think that there is a draw to going to a place and being on a residential campus and immersing yourself in that kind of traditional way of getting higher education. So I don't know that it's going to replace us. It may squeeze out some of the smaller colleges. It may tighten a little bit. Certainly going to be changing how we do what we do. And offering not only the residential type of option, the face-to-face option, but hybrid types of options and online options. But I don't think it's going to necessarily replace traditional colleges and universities.
Everybody who's offering these free online courses is still struggling to figure out ways how they're going to pay for it in the end. And in some ways, the fact that they're offering them for free now is a great service, and I think that's a great thing that we're doing. But I know that not everybody's going to be able to do that for very long because the costs are reasonably high. And so we're going to need to figure out models that we can use to pay for some of these things. And that might be, again, thinking more of these kinds of hybrid learning environments where maybe the MOOC courses become more like textbooks that people can choose to buy and use in their own class. Maybe the MOOC courses are going to be things that people take as continuing education and their businesses pay for people to participate in those things. Maybe there's going to be ways where individuals can have lower cost university education by being able to apply some credits that they've earned in those courses to other kinds of learning experiences, and they're willing to pay something for that. So I think we're still really just trying to figure out our ways how this is going to make sense, and I'm pretty sure nobody has figured it out yet. But I think it's great that so many places are experimenting with it. I do think that we'll continue to see, and this persists in most of what we see in online experiences at this point, sort of the free-to-play or freemium model, where there's some stuff that you get for free, and that's open to everybody, and then there's other stuff you have to pay for within that. So it might be that you're paying for extra services or particular courses or credentials, but I think we'll continue to see a large array of offerings for free, even if it's only getting 80% of it or something like that through a lot of these experiences. And I think that at least will be here to stay for quite a while.